Hey guys, how are you doing? This is Zed from Zed Outdoors and I hope you're having an awesome day. So today I've come down to see Jack Wheeler. Jack, how are you doing?
Good, Zed. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Now, if you're not familiar with Jack, Jack is a full-time woodworker with a background in timber framing, and he's now making a name for himself, turning, making spoons, etc. Now, what this video is going to be about is looking around Jack's beautiful workshop here in the Norfolk countryside, which is in the east of England, about 2.5 hours outside of London. Now, in this video, what we're going to do is have a detailed look around the location that he's in, as well as the workshop itself, because there's a lot of history about this location. Now, what this video is also going to do is kick off a small series on filming with Jack during my visit down to see him. Those videos will be detailed tutorials looking at a couple of different projects, and what we're going to do is film those in a lot of detail, hopefully share those with you in the very near future. If those videos are already out by the time you're watching this video, links will be down to those below in the description. So what we're going to do in this video, first we're going to talk about the location that we're in and the surrounding kind of areas, then we're going to look at the workshop itself, and then we're going to go into the workshop and look at all the different things that are going on. I need to stress that Jack is a full-time woodworker, so everything you're going to be seeing now is stuff that he actually uses. It's not just for show, it's for stuff that he uses in his day-to-day work. So Jack, with your kind permission, shall we begin?
Let's do it.
Excellent. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the rest of this video where we're going to do a workshop tour of Jack Wheeler. So Jack, for those not familiar with you as a maker, would you like to talk a little bit about your background and your experience and your speciality?
Yeah, so I studied sculpture at art school sort of 20 odd years ago, and then always working with wood, and then went into timber framing really fairly early on, and did that for about sort of 10-15 years, still dabbling with it a little bit, and now I've kind of started making smaller things. So
and with the timber framing, what is that? Is that restoration? Is it actually building, or is it a bit of everything?
Yeah, different things. So I kind of I did a lot of work repairing historic timber frame buildings, but also some new stuff as well. I was particularly interested in working with hand tools at that time and trying to convert trees into beams as well with hand tools, which was challenging at times, but yeah, I still really love that kind of work and do little bits of it, but the focus has really moved towards designing and making woodenware, so things that can be used or might be decorative, and all through both of those things I've kind of kept touch with making more sculptural pieces as well.
And so would it be kind of suffice to say that no matter what it is you'd be working on, you'd be working with wood and hand tools?
Yeah. I mean, the hand tools thing, you know, I use machinery as well. Not sort of fixated on that, but yeah, I'm very interested in that hand tool processes as well. So they're a big part of all of the work that I do, really. Yeah.
And so the inspiration for your work, where does that come from currently?
I take a lot of inspiration from all sorts of things, really, but the natural world, working with natural materials, but I look at a lot of Asian things, particularly at the moment, so a lot of pottery and ceramics gets me quite excited. But yeah, still very interested in architecture as well.
And so your focus, unless I'm mistaken, is you're kind of, how can I put it, you're not being so much public facing in terms of the work that you do and teaching and whatnot. You've kind of just been getting on with it, haven't you, in your workshop? And
yeah, exactly that. So I've worked with sort of private clients and different things over the years, but now trying to make and sell smaller stuff is where most of the focus is going.
so would you like to talk a little bit about the actual location we're in terms of what part of the country?
Yeah, so we're in rural North Norfolk, about 4 miles inland from the sea, and we're on a private estate, which is quite a relatively small estate. There's hundreds of estates around East Anglia. And yeah, the building that you can see behind us is what was the original estate carpenter's workshop. So yeah, I guess at one time there was a small team of carpenters that worked in here, doing all the woodworking things that were needed on the estate and cottages.
So this is something we spoke briefly off camera about, and that the local crafts, especially for example somewhere around this locality, a lot of it was really just out of necessity, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So in terms of the forge, the blacksmith and the woodworkers and things like that, was it all to kind of sustain the local community?
Exactly, yeah. I think probably the carpenter shop here was serving the estate and their needs rather than the wider community. That's what I imagine it is the case anyway. I mean that would have been quite a considerable amount of work, I guess, in the time.
And how long have you been using this space for then?
So I think I've been here for maybe four or 5 years now. Yeah, and before that I was buying timber from the estate, so I knew about this place since, yeah, probably for 10 years or more. Yeah,
So inside, obviously, we're going to have a look here shortly inside the workshop and all your fancy tools set up. Just sticking to the outside for a moment. So round the corner, is that where the kind of wood processing station is?
yeah, kind of. Although because most of the wood that I'm using comes from this estate and the woodlands on the estate. But this is what was the builder's yard. It's noted down as on the maps. So yeah, I use it as a kind of a place to bring timber, process timber, and a bit of drying timber. But a lot of the material that I work with is quite large diameter, so it's usually I just leave it in the woods and then process it there and bring what's needed here as and when I need it. I find that the shade of the wood in the summer is pretty useful in slowing drying of large diameter timber, whereas out here it's quite exposed to the sun, which can be problematic.
And is there just specific species of wood that you specialise in, or?
No, since making smaller work, I've sort of explored lots of different timbers, which has been a real joy actually, because with the timber framing work it was a lot more particular or specific timbers that I was using, like oak and chestnut and some of the softwoods like Douglas fir and larch and things. But with making woodenware you can use lots of different woods, and that's been really important actually, especially on an estate like this where there's all sorts of species of timber. But yeah, at the moment I've got a big batch of cherry that I'm working through, and also chestnut and ash and all sorts of things. Yeah, I'll try different timbers for different things. They all have their own sort of particular qualities that make them valuable for particular things, depending on what I'm making really.
So Jack, what are we looking at here?
So this is the old estate rack saw, which was at one time used to convert the trees into all the material that was needed. And you can see, yeah, it's still largely intact. It would have been driven by a big traction engine, a steam powered, from a belt that would have gone out that way. And yeah, there's a couple of old boys in the village who can remember bringing water to the traction engine when the saw was running.
So Jack, we're in your workshop.
We are.
So this building, was this something you had to renovate yourself?
No, I haven't done any renovating on it. It was kind of, I think the last carpenter to be in here was maybe in the 80s, I think. So it had become a bit of a dumping ground. So there was a lot of stuff that was cleared out before I moved in, so I could bring all my crap in here. I haven't done that much, really. I've kind of, it was divided up a little bit. There was some kind of stud walls in here, so I got rid of them. The original bench is still there. There was another one here which had about 1.5 legs left, so I decided to get rid of that one. And then I just built a bit of tool storage, and I've slowly doing things to sort of, there's a list of things to kind of ongoing to kind of make it work better for what I need, but it's getting there.
And the main thing to stress once again that this is a working workshop.
Yeah, although it feels like I'm sort of in a museum or something, it's I'm using it as a workshop to make my work, and yeah.
And in terms of the speciality of the items that you're making currently, what is it you're kind of focusing more on?
So I make a range of different things, all within the sort of woodenware remit, whatever that means. So I do turning, so I'll make sort of turned bowls, cups, plates, that sort of thing.
And that's on a pole lathe, isn't it?
All on a pole lathe, yeah. And then a lot of carved pieces as well. So again, a different kind of range of things. But and I'm always looking to kind of move into new territories, find new things I want to make, just keep it interesting. So yeah, quite strongly inspired by Japanese and Asian woodenware and ceramics as well.
So starting off here in the corner, what are we looking at here?
So this is my lathe, which is loosely sort of based on George Lely's old lathe, the lathe that Robin Wood made and that others using. I like the sort of solid structure. I mean, it's totally overkill, but coming from a timber framing background, just what I kind of do. So I've just made it like that, and I had big lumps of wood lying around. So
what wood in particular is this made from?
Actually, it's a mix. This stuff is from a big monkey puzzle tree that somebody gave me, and it was the most sticky, sappy, strange wood that I've ever worked with, but quite nice to use. And then some bits of oak and elm and different things, whatever was lying around really.
And so at the back you've got all your tools.
Yeah.
So what are we looking at here? So on the left is a selection of all your turning tools.
Yeah, some of the hooks, and I've just started sort of going into the world of forging my own hooks as well. So, which basically you need to do if you're turning on a pole lathe. So yeah.
And then on the right you've got the gouges.
Yeah, and I do a bit of kind of spindle work on here as well, but although not very much. So I do use the gouges and the skew chisel a little bit for different things.
And are they vintage ones that you've restored, or?
I don't really know where you accumulate stuff over the years, so I don't really know. They've all come from mix of places like car boot sales, people giving you stuff. Yeah, vintage ones. Some of them have been restored, but yeah, all sorts of places.
So this is where basically you do all your turning then?
Yeah, so all the turning's done in this little corner, and yeah, I think I've been doing it for about 3 years, so it's still quite new, and I'm still really excited by the process. I've been doing quite a lot of end grain work, and I think probably this lathe is not that well geared up for that, in that your posture is a bit awkward, you're sort of leaning over a bit. So I'm looking at maybe building another treadle lathe based on a historic Chinese lathe, which is quite a different thing, but where you're seated in front of the work. But that's another story. Maybe next time you come, there'll be a second lathe. We can have a look at. But yeah.
And in terms of lathing, would I be right in saying you're essentially self-taught?
Yeah. I've just put a lot of hours into figuring it out, basically. Obviously, there's a lot of skilled turners out there using pole lathes, so I've sort of had contact with those and learnt a lot through some of your videos also, Zed. So yeah, but you can't really escape the fact that you're going to have to put some hours into learning it if you want to sort of get anywhere with the pole lathe. It was very unfamiliar territory to me when I started.
So Jack, what are we looking at here?
These are just some of my mostly carving chisels, so which will come into play for some of the other videos we're going to do while you're here. So yeah, again, a selection. Some of them newer ones and some older ones. There's a whole mixed bag there, and I kind of pick them up from all over as and when I need them. If I need a particular profile of gouge, for a particular purpose, and I haven't got it, I'll get one, or look at my drawers full of old crap and see if there's one in there that I can use.
And is this all kind of laid out to make it easy access for when you're working?
Yeah, I mean, I've put it. It's not always laid out like this, but if I am, because I've tied it up for you, Zed. So, but if
I feel privileged.
If I'm working on a particular carving, I might know that I'll need, half a dozen gouges. They'll be the ones that I come to. So yeah, I do use this. Stick a bit of ply on top of the jointer quite often because it's like a table, isn't it, when I'm not using it.
So the jointer is that something you use from time to time?
Yeah, that's so along with woodenware and the timber framing that we've touched on, I've done bits of joinery and furniture making as well. So I've kind of done quite a broad range of things. And there was a time a few years ago when I was doing a lot of joinery. I kept getting jobs doing joinery, and at the time I didn't have any machines, so I was collecting wood, taking it all to a joiner friend, getting him to machine it all, then going to pick it up, and it was getting silly, so I just bought the planer to be able to do that stuff myself. But yeah, it's a really useful bit of kit to speed up certain processes.
So here we have obviously a small selection of the kind of items that you make. I think it'll be worthwhile maybe just showcasing a few of the pieces for those that are not familiar with the kind of work that you do. I think maybe if we start at the end here with this cup, we'd like to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so this is turned on the pole lathe. It's an end grain cup which is made of ash. It's turned, and then I've actually carved it. So I've turned it all first, and then these little grooves are actually carved with a little gouge.
Oh, so you clamp it in and then?
So I've once it's come off the lathe, this is smooth, and then I've clamped it in a vise like that, and just sat there merrily carving away. Some people would say, "Why have you done that?" But it adds a sort of something that I think you could probably turn them. These little flutes, little grooves in there, but if you catch it in a certain light, it's got a lovely sort of carved quality. And then it's finished with urushi lacquer, which is an amazing natural finish, and basically makes it completely waterproof and sealed. And it means I could, pour hot water, hot drink into there, and there's no risk of the cup cracking or anything, because it's probably only 4 mil thick at the bottom, which is end grain. Normally, if you did that with ash and tried to seal it, you'd probably find that it leaked because it's very porous.
So the urushi helps in that process then, being able to...
Yeah, it makes an incredible seal, basically, and all it is the sap of what's called the lacquer tree, and it's a sort of Asian finish that has almost infinite ways of being used. I'm using it, it's literally the sort of filtered raw sap that is painted on, and it's cured very carefully in a humid, warm environment. So I have a space upstairs, which we'll see later, and it's applied in thin layers, and between each layer it has to be cured for sort of 24 hours. Yeah.
And so moving on to the next piece.
So this one is what's called a katakuchi, or a pouring bowl. Again, very much inspired by some Japanese pieces. And this is made of elm, and it's turned on the pole lathe, and then the spout is carved. And it's quite an interesting object because it's exploiting one of the possibilities of a reciprocal pole lathe, so that you can turn objects with projecting parts like this, and actually manage to turn this section by virtue of the fact that with your foot control you can take a cut in this section of the bowl, which you wouldn't be able to do on an electric lathe. So I quite like that kind of possibility. So yeah, you're left with a chunk here. You can see that here with this cup. I haven't yet carved the handle, but that's exactly the same principle. So you leave a projecting part on, and then the handle will be carved. I'm going to let that dry just to make sure that it doesn't crack before I've put all the hours into carving it. But yeah. So that's that one.
I'm moving on to the next piece.
Again, this is a cherry little cup, turned on the pole lathe again. And then after this is carved, this fluting's just carved with a very small gouge. Again, once it's dried, I'll usually wait till it dries. You tend to get a nicer finish off the gouge when the wood's dry. I'll clamp it in the vise and just sit there and carve. Yeah. This one's a little tea bowl, side grain this time, so it's the other way, made of elm, which I think is really quite lovely with the urushi finish. It's sort of on the side grain, you get this where you get the end grain sections, it goes much darker, and then on the side it sort of glows a bit more, which I really like. Again, you could use that with hot liquids or anything. There's no danger of cracking. And this one, similar to the cherry one, I think that's actually sycamore, that one, which has gone quite dark for some reason, but don't know why. These ones are yet to be, they're still quite wet. I think I only turned them a couple of days ago, this one and this one. That's spalted sycamore, and I've just started. I've never been that interested in spalted woods particularly, but I've recently got some of this a different finish called Hasui ceramic, which is a kind of liquid glass. So it's a really amazing finish, and it allows it basically looks like there's nothing on there apart from a slightly glassy surface. So I'm quite excited about that, because the lacquer can be a bit all of one colour and darkness, but yeah.
And here you got one of your sculptures. Is that?
This is like a little, yeah, I just had a little play around recently with making these. This is from a dry piece of oak, making some of these little sort of vases just to put dried stems and stuff in. Don't know, a bit of a deviation really from the normal stuff, but yeah, I quite like having a little play, allowing a bit of time to play around and try different things sometimes. And that's been ebonized with oh, I can't remember what you call it. Forgotten completely.
Vinegar?
Yeah, steel wool dissolved in vinegar. Iron acetate, that's it. So which is reacted with the natural tannins in the wood. Another little cherry cup, different shape that time. I think the outside of that's probably done with a skew chisel or something. It's a little sycamore one. Don't know what that is. Cherry. I think that's ebonized cherry with urushi on. So it gives it a different colour that time. And that's. I really like the marks you get from the hook tools. It's just really kind of. It feels like in that nice way, a hand thrown pot. I think it just has that quality about it. The urushi really sort of picks that up. You can see that it's not kind of machined, I think. It has more of a nice feel to it. This one is another little pouring bowl. And this is sort of a bit of a favourite piece. That's a elm one. That, and it was kind of accidental because I think I had this section here that was to become the spout. I had a catch somewhere up here, or on this top section of it, basically. I had a bad catch with the hook tool, which it broke a section of it off. And in order to save it, I just thought, right, I'll have the spout down a bit lower, which you do actually see on some ceramic examples, but I quite like it, and because of that. So I'll probably try and make some more pieces like that.
And just moving to the back here, you've got some utensils and you've got a couple of mats. Would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, so I really like carving texture. I think probably for me, the texture and pattern is like one of the sort of signature things on the things that I make. So yeah, I liked the idea of just trying to kind of develop a range of different patterns that I can use, and thinking about the most simple kind of objects that I can make. It makes a good use of. Usually, I use sort of quarter sawn. These are oak. This one. Again, it's just. I'll make a few reference lines on there in pencil, and then just sit there merrily carving away. And then it's usually cut out on the bandsaw afterwards. That's that. And it could be used for any purposes really that you can dream up in your kitchen or dining experience.
Well, you've got the utensils there.
Yeah, some sort of ladles, carved from cherry. Don't make so many spoons, but sometimes I'll sort of go into a little spoon rabbit hole and play around with new shapes. There's so many talented spoon makers out there to be inspired by. So it is, and I do like a nice spoon.
So is this your wood pile?
This is where all the miscellaneous little offcuts end up, and they're not usually this organised, to be honest, Sid. Yeah, it might seem like quite a big workshop here, but before I came here, I had a much bigger space, and I'd been in there for about 10 years and accumulated a lot of stuff that I was kind of reluctant to throw away. Here I have to be a lot more strict about that stuff, but still quite nice to have some bits. So yeah, there's just scraps really, but that's that.
So depending on projects that you're working on, they come in use here and there?
Maybe, yeah, or maybe they'll just sit there for years and never, you know, they might be here when I leave, to be honest, who knows.
And then you've got your bandsaw, your trusty bandsaw.
Yeah, so the bandsaw's like invaluable in doing what it does, and it would be a struggle without it.
And is this what, something you restored yourself, or?
No, it's an old, I think it came out of an old school. I think I bought it from a guy in Wales, similar to the other machine. I was sort of looking for, the quality old English ones. And I'm not on 3-phase here, so it's just whatever will, you know, be the best kind of machine that you can use on regular electric.
So is that what you're looking out for when you were procuring the tools? The electric tools, things that are sturdy, they're proven, they work, they're reliable?
Yeah, exactly that. Just, you know, quality machines basically, and they're not massive machines, but they're yeah, good workhorses. Yeah.
So moving on to the left here, what are we looking at here?
So this is when I came in here, we put this wood burner in, which is one of those sort of fancy ones with a steel, perforated steel tube down, so you can chuck all your shavings and sawdust in there, and it'll burn away, that's really great. I worked in a completely unheated space for about 10 years, and just to have that is a joy, to be honest, in the winter, because it's not very warm in here.
I was going to say, yeah, come winter time, yeah.
But just having that, you can load it up and it will chuck out a lot of heat. So that's been one of the biggest joys for me coming here.
That's it, keep it warm.
Yeah.
So in the corner here, what are we looking at? We've got some fancy axes hanging up.
Yeah, I've accumulated quite a few axes over the years, but a few of the bigger axes, and then the sash clamps and that sort of stuff. A couple of nice old saws.
And next to that, you've got is that the saw cabinet?
Yeah, just the hand saws. Some of the ones that get used. This is one of my favourite possessions, I think. Which is a Japanese, called a Mibiki Oga, if I'm saying that correctly, which was the sort of Japanese equivalent to the pit saws that we have over here.
Oh, interesting.
For ripping big sections down. So yeah.
It's interesting how much it differs, doesn't it? The techniques of Japanese woodworking and kind of quote-unquote Western woodworking, how the principles of it differ quite a bit.
Yeah, it is, and how it uses the body in different ways. It is really interesting.
So are these kind of different tools that you use in your day-to-day work?
Yeah, and I mean, not all the time. Using saws was more sort of part of the heavy carpentry stuff, but yeah, they still get used fairly regularly.
So moving on to the other side of the workshop, is this kind of a collection of like vintage tools, antique tools and whatnot? Yeah,
all miscellaneous bits and pieces that I use, planes and chisels and things, gathering dust. So some things I've worked on historic buildings. I had to produce I remember a particular job. I had to produce hundreds of meters of moulded beams, and doing that all by hand. I needed loads of different moulding planes. So they don't get used regularly, I wouldn't say, but for particular purposes they're there and can be used. But yeah.
And here, is this your main bench, basically?
Yeah, so this bench was actually here already. It's one of two that were in here. I've just put a new top on it and done a few little things to it, but it's, yeah, I think it's what they call a Nicholson bench.
Yeah, it's a beast, isn't it, this one?
It is a beast, yeah, and I think it was probably longer at one time. So I guess, I imagine it would have probably been worked at by two carpenters, one on each side, maybe even more, but yeah, it's a great thing.
So moving across over here, you've got a lovely selection hanging up here, Jack. So are these like tools that are just commonly used once again, that you're using quite regularly?
Yeah, I tried to sort of put some things there that are within reach that are getting used fairly regularly. So if they don't, I'll try and take them off and then put something else there, sort of thing.
Just a quick question then, on the tools front, what have you found to be a good way of storing tools in terms of day-to-day use? Is it things that you can just see visually, that you know you can just grab, or drawers or shelves or whatnot? What have you found works well for you?
Yeah, I mean, I thought about that quite a lot when I came here, because I had accumulated quite a few tools, and I knew that I was coming to a smaller space, so I built the shelving unit at the back there, and sort of thought about, you know, how I can put things within reach. One of the bugbears with tools is that steel rusts, and these kind of spaces are invariably quite moist in the winter, so you sort of, yeah, there's no easy way around that. Just, you've got to kind of just wipe oil over it, or whatever your strategy is, or use the tools regularly. But it's a constantly evolving thing, I think, that it's like, you know, because I'm making a lot of different kinds of things, it's not like I'm just constantly reaching for the same tool, but I'm always trying to make things so that, yeah, if I want a particular thing, I know where it is, at least put it away, you know, try and be so there's some order to it, and so that there's some sort of flow to how things are happening.
And now moving on to your trusty steed, your shave horse.
Yeah.
Is this based on a particular design, or?
Not really. I think it's what you call a dumb head shave horse. So you can have sort of two arms coming down here with a bar across, which is maybe more of an English style one. But yeah, it's a kind of the design of it. It's something I've come up with. These like sliding dovetail joints is something I think I saw it first working in France. I think I saw some French carpenters using it on some trestles, and I just really liked it. So
I do like that. I've noticed you've done that joint on a few of the items that you make.
Yeah, I make all my trestles like that, because once you get your head around how to actually cut the joinery on there, it's a really, you can you can just knock them out and have basically flat pack trestles, which is great if you need, you know, if you're working on site or something. It's and they're just such clever design, simple thing. And this has like so I can need a hammer for that. So it has I decided to do it all in one. I put a spoon mule attachment that goes in there, something like that, and you can just keep the thing on there, so I can just be sitting for. And I think this is based on the design of Dawson Moore, Michigan Sloyd, I think he goes by. But I've just sort of freeformed it and made it up, fit this shave horse thing. I could have made a dedicated spoon mule on its own, but then you've got two things to keep in one space, and it's not that much of a faff to take that out and just have the shave horse.
And lastly, moving on to another workbench you got here.
Yeah, so it's probably a bit excessive to have two workbenches, but I've actually found it quite useful. At one point I was thinking, oh, I'm going to change it around and not have that there, but I find it quite useful. So I tend to do more carving work on here, and that's a bit more, I mean, the big bench is more geared up for hand planing, joinery stuff. It's really good because it's solid. But this one I find more versatile. I can get round it more easily if I'm doing sort of carving work and stuff.
And this is another kind of vintage one as well then?
No, I made that. That was one of my first sort of things when in my first workshop spaces, I built that bench, and I think it was based on an American guy's design. It's very simple. I would never build it like that now, but it's fine. It's quite a solid thing. It bolts together, and it's just got a laminated top of beech. There's these sort of sliding planing stops. Don't really use them at all for planing now because I do it all on the other bench, but yeah, still a useful bench.
So Batman, he has his layer. Is this your superhero layer?
Yeah, I suppose so, Zed.
Turns to sharpening man.
Yeah, I think this space was probably, I don't really know, it probably functioned as a kind of storeroom originally. All this shelving stuff was here, and these lovely little drawers all dovetailed together with their little knobs on. So yeah, as soon as I sort of moved in here, I thought, yeah, having a dedicated sharpening space is everyone's dream, isn't it? And having the light from the window and everything, it's like, yeah, it's ideal. You can make a mess here and not worry about having to clear it off the bench and stuff like that. So that's been a joy to have.
So just starting from here, just a kind of brief overview. So what have you got? You've got a Pro Sorby?
Yeah, they're really good, but brilliant machines for I find it particularly useful for anything where you need to get rid of a lot of metal quickly. So if I pick up a load of old chisels from a car boot sale or someone gives me or something, they're great for that. Yeah, and then the Tormek, which to be honest gets a lot less use. I don't tend to use that very much at all, really. But it is what it is. They are good. If you want a hollow grind or something on a knife, it's perfect for that.
And then moving on to the kind of sharpening, I think this will require a video on its own. You've got some really wonderful selection. So what do you mainly use then for your sharpening? Is it brick paper? Is it stones? Or
I tend to use stones, and basically, there's a whole world you can go into sharpening, and I'm not saying what I do is right or wrong, but I just use what I use. I used to use oil stones for years, just oil stones with WD, and that worked. But then someone's like, why don't you use water stones? So I tried it and then realised it's just way faster. So I use these just that are fairly easy to get hold of, the Shapton stones.
Ah, these are the Shapton ones.
Shapton ones, yeah. So I think I used like 3 grits of those. But it depends what I'm sharpening, to be honest. I do use the papers a bit, but not really. Mostly just use those. And then I've got miscellaneous little bits of other stones and a few natural stones, and even a bit of roof slate there, look. You can use that. You can use all sorts of things to sharpen. And actually outside, which we didn't have a look at, there's an old hand cranked grindstone out the front, which is probably beyond, I don't know, maybe it could be restored and brought back to service.
And with the studs, I know once again it's a whole topic in of itself, but just touch on it ever so briefly. With the Shapton waterstones, do you have to soak them in water? How does that work? Or
yeah, they don't. With a lot of the waterstones, they need soaking for sometimes for quite a while before you use them, or you might even keep them in water continually. But the Shapton ones, you can pretty much just slosh some water on top, and then they're ready to go. So I find them quite, pretty versatile. And I just use one of these, I think this is a Toma diamond stone. So it depends what you're sharpening. If you're sharpening chisels and plane irons, you've got to keep the stones fairly flat. If you want to make a flat surface, you need the stone to be flat. So I just use these to flatten the stones after I've used them. That keeps it all, and it's a bit messy, but it's fairly quick. Yeah, and you can get. I think the finest grit I've got is about 8,000, and I don't really find. I mean, you can go ridiculous with this stuff, but I don't really think there's much need. Maybe if you're using a hand plane and looking for a super fine finish on some tricky grain or something, but for the most part, I think that's where I'm at with it.
so, Jack, we're nice and cosy.
We are
in your little loft. So was this something you mentioned off camera, and this was something that you built relatively new?
Yeah, so this space was just like a floor. It wasn't enclosed at all, and it was one of my lockdown projects when COVID started. I sort of had it in mind when I started working with Urushi. One of the biggest challenges with it in a wood workshop is the dust. Dust is the enemy, so it'll just attract dust. So creating a kind of dedicated finishing space and somewhere I could actually store finished work and keep it, relatively clean and stuff.
So does Urushi require that? To have quite a clean space and
it definitely helps, and just have a dedicated space that you come to do finishing. So I do Urushi here, but also like if I'm like oiling or just to packaging and sending stuff, and it's kind of a versatile space, but it's mostly for the Urushi.
So are these items that are in the process?
Yeah, so these are cherry cups that are all, they've had like I think one layer of lacquer applied, and there'll probably be at least 5 layers. So they go, so it's painted on and then wiped off. This is a technique called Fuki Urushi, where it's basically a wiping off method, and then they go in here, which is the curing cabinet, which is, you can see a few more pieces. It's basically just a warm box with a high moisture content. So at the moment it's like 79%, so it's about right. Humidity is about 79%. You want it to be somewhere around there.
Oh, interesting. So that's what happens then in between the layers.
Yeah, so counterintuitively, you're actually drying something by putting it in a wet place, which is kind of bizarre. So yeah, that's just having, if that was downstairs and in the dusty environment, it would be really challenging to do it, I think. Probably on a small scale, and I decided to build a bigger cabinet because I've worked on some big sculptures that were lacquered, so it gives me flexibility, and I can get quite a lot of cups in there if needs be. And then after, sorry, I was going to just say that after the layers have been applied and you've done the last one, then that will stay in there for at least a month sometimes 6 weeks or 2 months.
Oh wow, so it's quite a while.
It's quite a while, yeah, because there's a toxicity to urushi before it's properly cured, so you have to be careful about how you use it, basically, and make sure you've got it properly cured.
And while we're here, just have a brief look on top of the actual drying cabinet itself. What have you got? Have you got other items that are drying? And
just a mixture. So I just got some bits out, which are usually sort of packaged up for taking to markets and stuff like that. So that some of this is quite old bits and pieces, but I just got it out so you can have a look. These are some nice ceramic pots of a potter friend that I'm making some lids for. Yeah, just a mixture of different things.
and you got some of the packing stuff here.
Yeah, the more stuff I send out, the more I'll sort of develop it into a bit, you know, what's needed. I've got sort of boxes stashed away as well. And these are some recent. This is the Hasui ceramic finish that I was talking about. So that's spalted sycamore, and you can not really tell there's anything on there, but when you pour liquids in, it kind of beads off. It's quite amazing. So those are just some recent finished pieces. That will have a little lid made for it. This was that's still got some lacquering work to do. That's chestnut turned on the pole lathe.
And lastly, just this corner here, what are these? Are these ebonized cups? Or?
Yeah, these are cherry cups. They're yet to have lacquer applied, but they're just ebonized cherry. I've recently got some coloured lacquers as well, which I'm sort of interested to try. So I have actually got some. I think that was it. That's some black one, a black lacquer. But yeah.
So there you have it, my friends. That is a wrap for this video. Jack, thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure.
As soon as I arrived on site, I was reluctant to ask him any questions about the stuff in the workshop. I thought I want to save my excitement and my curiosity until we film this video. But it is genuinely and truly a stunning location. We were speaking about it when I arrived. We had a little look around.
Yeah.
And it's honestly, the location is beautiful. You cannot hear a peep from anything. Literally nothing. And it is a beautiful location, a lot of nature around where you are.
Yeah.
And then obviously the workshop itself and the surrounding areas. You've got a beautiful workyard, plenty of space to work in, and then the workshop itself. So I've had a couple of mutual friends, come down and visit beforehand, and they all commented that it's a beautiful workshop. And like you said, it has a feel and look of like a museum or a showpiece.
Yeah.
But it's a working workshop.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I feel really lucky to work here, and I think I don't know, for me the working environment it really feeds into the sort of inspiring you to make things and all the rest of it.
So if okay with you, I'll move in next week. And
fine.
So basically, yeah, it's just been a real pleasure to have you show us around. The workshop, really do appreciate it. Like I said, this is just a general workshop tour. Certain sections we could have spoken about for way longer, the sharpening section and the tools, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But I wanted this video just to kind of be just a general walkthrough, because I'm always getting comments on my channel saying, Zed, can you not do dedicated workshop tours? So this is something I'm trying to do now. So hopefully it's giving you guys a bit of inspiration in terms of how Jack has his things set up. And like I stress once again, this is a working workshop. So yes, things set up for his needs and the projects that he's working on. And once again, to reiterate, it's still work in progress, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and it adapts to what you're doing, sort of thing. Sometimes I'll push everything to the side because I'll be working on something big, need the floor space or whatever. So yeah, it's flexible.
So guys, there you go. That is a wrap for this video. As I mentioned at the very beginning, this video is part of a series of videos that I'm filming with Jack during my visit down to see him. And we're going to be hopefully filming one, if not two, very detailed tutorials. Links for those will be down below in the description. I highly recommend you go check that out. In the interim, what I'm going to do is put a link below to both Jack's Instagram and his website. On both of those platforms, you can find out about the plethora of work that he gets up to. He's got a lot more pictures and a lot more detail about all the items that he makes. It's not something he's going to say openly himself, but I'm going to tell you now, from my vantage point, seeing this all in person myself, that his work is incredible. It really is absolutely beautiful, and it's all functional. You know, the items that you're making. And I've heard nothing but praise from other very reputable makers. So yeah, links below to his Instagram and his website. Mean the world to me if you gain any value from this video whatsoever. Head over to his Instagram, give him a follow. You can check out the work that he's gotten up to on there and continues to get up to, as well as his website, which contains all the information about the items that you sell, the teaching that Jack does here at his workshop and across the UK, and a plethora of other things that he gets up to. So like I said, links below to Jack's Instagram and website, and also links below to the other videos I'm going to be filming in this series with Jack. So Jack, once again, I really do appreciate you allowing me into your space to document so that others can get a bit of an insight
it's a pleasure.
into your workspace. And guys, I shall see you on the follow-up videos. Links to that will be down below in the description. And as always, I hope whatever you're doing, you have a blessed day, a blessed week ahead. From Jack Wheeler and myself, Zed Outdoors, peace out.